I'm Karen Diaz, and I'm really happy to see all of you here today. I'm very excited for this event. And I just want to take a moment before we get started to acknowledge how we got here. So first I want to say that we in the libraries were very smart in I think it was 2017, to hire Sally Brown to be our first ever exhibits coordinator. Sally is an artist who has not met a blank wall for which she cannot envision an improvement upon. She's been creating exhibits of many types and ambitions within our downtown Evansdale and Health Sciences libraries for years. Some of the exhibits travel to our divisional campuses as well as to other regional academic libraries. A few years ago, she and I discussed the idea of how we might increase representation of the art that is displayed in these, our very inspirational and historic reading rooms. Fast forward to last year, when a call for the Women of WVU Fund grant was announced, and Sally saw an opportunity to make this a reality. She quickly pulled together a small team. John Cuthbert, Lori Hostetler, and I met to ideate the proposal. And John and Lori were able to easily pull together the names of a couple dozen notable women of WVU and West Virginia, and we wrote and finalized the grant proposal. So then I would like to note that the women of the WVU Women's Fund were then smart enough to select this proposal and fund it. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, the WVU Women's Fund benefits female WVU students or any WVU programming benefiting women and West Virginia. So I would like to issue a sincere thank you to them today. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the letters of support that we've received from Allison Helm, who's the director of the School of Art and Design within the College of Creative Arts, and Leslie Tower, the director of the Women's Resource Center, for giving credence to this request. Faculty within the School of Art and Design also helped us identify the right artist for this project. This project will result in the creation of 3 portraits, 1 portrait each year for 3 years, painted by 1 to 3 current BFA or MFA students or recent graduates of the WVU program who identify as women. The portraits will be installed in the WVU Library's Milano and Robinson reading rooms, we're in the Robinson room today, on a semi-permanent basis and added to the West Virginia and Regional History Center collection. Many spaces of honor at WVU and in general showcase notable individuals that do not adequately represent the diversity of WVU's past or present. Typically, in our case, the artworks are donations to the libraries. This project aims to intentionally shape the collection. This project will have multiple layers of effect, both in the process and the results for years to come. It will provide the new artist, who you'll meet shortly, a stellar opportunity to showcase her talent and add this experience to her CV. It's worth noting that while there are more women in art school today, there are far fewer women who are represented in public art collections and museums than men. The project will also directly impact students who use these inspiring spaces as they look up at the portraits in this prominent university space and perhaps begin to see themselves in new roles or grow in their thinking about who contributes to making the university a great institution or the state an important contributor to the nation. Unveiling each portrait will be an exciting event in and of itself, provoking more inquiry into this cause and the women highlighted in the portraits. I know that since we've started this work, I've learned lots more about Victorine than I knew before. And I keep learning more by meeting people who knew her too, so it's pretty exciting. So we're so glad that you came to celebrate this first unveiling with us today. We have many more exciting women to choose from for our future portraits, and we hope that you will come back in a year's time to celebrate the next one. And now what we are going to do, we're going to do things a little out of order on the program. We're actually going to start with the unveiling because we recognize you're going to otherwise get a sneak peek in one of the presentations. So I would like to invite the artist Anna Allen and Sally Brown, our exhibits curator, up to do the honors. And now you'll all have the opportunity to look at Victorine as we learn a little bit more about her. And I would like to invite up our interim director of our West Virginia and Regional History Center, Lori Hostetler, to tell us a little bit more about Victorine.
All right, thank you all. As Karen said, I'm Lori Hostetler. I'm the interim director of the West Virginia and Regional History Center. And we're the Archives and Special Collections part of the library. And we're very honored to be the home of the Victorine Lewis Stahl Monroe papers. It's an archival collection. We keep them in closed storage, but it is open to the public for research. And after the program, we do have a selection of materials from the collection available for you to view here in a little pop-up exhibit. So about Victorine Lewis Stahl Monroe. Some of you here may have actually known Victorine. I'm actually from Clarksburg and I still live in Clarksburg. And so I've known of Victorine, but I've never had the pleasure to meet her in my lifetime. I became acquainted with her though through her papers. I worked at the center for many years and wore a lot of different hats, and when I was doing a lot of teaching and archival instruction, I used Victorine's collection frequently as an example when I was teaching primary source literacy or archival literacy. The collection contains lots of different kinds of formats that you would typically see in archival collections. There's correspondence, there's lots of photographs, there's lots of ephemera, there's a little bit of artifacts, there's programs, flyers, scrapbooks, which are a really important source of women's history, because many women created them. And so I always felt like it was a really wonderful representative collection. Plus, Victorine was a librarian and she was from my hometown, and so I was very proud of that too. So what my presentation today is going to be is a very quick historical overview of Victorine's life, mostly her professional life, but I just want to give the caveat that this is very much a selective talk. It's not a comprehensive overview of her life. There is someone working on a biography of Victorine, and hopefully that'll come out in the next couple of years so we can get all of the details. But this is just a kind of a quick trip through her life using materials from the archival collection. So, okay. All right, so Victorine was born in 1912. She would have been 110 years old this year. She was born in Cumberland, Maryland. Her parents were Campbell and Melinda Lewis Stahl, and she had a brother, Ben Smith. She was born in Cumberland, but then the family moved to Pittsburgh, and she lived in Pittsburgh until she was in 5th grade and attended integrated schools there. Both of her parents were teachers at different times, so it kind of, you can see where some of her skills came naturally. But when they moved to Clarksburg in 1922, they lived in an integrated neighborhood, but she did end up attending segregated schools. And she noted in some interviews that while her mother had been a teacher, that in Clarksburg her mother was also a dressmaker and had an integrated business, served both white and black customers. So this is an image of her and her mother from the collection. And then, so I mentioned that she went to segregated school. This is Kelly Miller School. The building still stands. It currently serves as the Kelly Miller Community Center in Clarksburg. When I was growing up, it was actually the Board of Education office for Harrison County. But she attended school there. She graduated in 1929. And upon her graduation, she left to go to West Virginia State College down in Institute, West Virginia. Here's a program from West Virginia State College. Her mother died, sadly, in 1929. That's, first semester of school. So it took her a little longer, but she did graduate with a degree in business administration in 1936. When she finished that degree, she returned to Clarksburg and she taught at Kelly Miller School. Her collection has a lot of Kelly Miller materials in it. These are some great photos of student club and a faculty committee. There's also some examples of ephemera. The junior-senior banquet, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what those letters might be or stand for, and could never really figure it out. But when you unfold that, there's a program in there on pieces of paper that are also cut out to that shape. And then there's a second program that was similarly constructed that was cool looking, but very ornate for a program. There's also a little handmade invitation for the athletics banquet, and in the previous photo, Victorine was on the athletics committee and she was in that picture. I didn't point her out, but so that unfolds, and it's got the menu and the program on the inside. So while she was teaching at Kelly Miller, in 1938, there was a Supreme Court decision that opened up segregated white colleges to black graduate students. This is the same Supreme Court decision that enabled Katherine Johnson to come to WVU. But Victorine was interested in pursuing further education and signed up for an extension course for that master's in Clarksburg, and the classes were held at Central Junior High, which was my junior high school. And while she was taking those classes, her advisor, Dr. Rebecca Pollock, encouraged her to come to WVU. She'd actually planned to go to Pitt and was accepted to Pitt and decided she would come to WVU. And so she did. When she came to WVU, although she lived in an somewhat integrated community in Clarksburg, there was still a racist situation in Morgantown where she could not live on campus or eat in the cafeteria. She often had lunch at her advisor's home with her advisor's niece. At the time, she was living with Mrs. Nora Marshall and their family here because she could not live in the dormitory spaces on campus. And just coincidentally, Mrs. Nora Marshall and family, that's the mother-in-law, Charlene Marshall, Morgantown's former mayor. So she did pursue the degree. She came in 42 and graduated in 1945. And she continued to work at Kelly Miller during that time. Also, while she was here, she was a charter member of the Gamma Chi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. That chapter here was founded in 1944. AKA is the first intercollegiate historically black sorority, and her collection contains many Alpha materials, and she was very active in that organization. There's a really cool scrapbook over there, and I don't know how well you all can see, but in the picture on the left, she's seated at the table, so it's harder to see her, but she's in the back row in the initiation photo. So after the integration of schools, she left Kelly Miller and as it closed, and moved on to Roosevelt Wilson High School in the Nutter Fort community in Clarksburg. She was a librarian there and also taught some classes. Interestingly, there's not a lot of material in the collection that I could see that came from her time at RW. I did find this. This is actually a 1984 piece, but this is the program for that class reunion of 1959, and they invited her back to speak at that reunion. And she was very much beloved at RW, and there's comments that I'll show from the community later on. The next photo, these are photos actually. These are just some candid photos that were in the collection. I'm sort of going chronologically, but these were taken in 1961, and I just thought they were really cool because so many of the pictures that we see of her, she's posed for things, but you know, she's particularly getting out of the car, just a more casual photograph that I thought I would share. So while she's teaching at RW, she comes back to WVU to work on a Master's of Library and Information Science. I maybe Master of Arts in Library Science, which was a program through the Everly, what's now the Everly College of Arts and Sciences. So she earned that degree in 1964 and then joined the faculty in 1966. And so I failed to mention, although it's in like the document on your sheet and it's listed the press release about this event, but in 1945 she became the first known Black woman graduate of WVU. And then in 1966 she became a pioneer again when she was the first Black faculty member. And it's like really important and like makes it more special to me that she was in the library faculty, so that was it's really cool. But this is the graduate school catalog from those years that show her name listed on the faculty. And these catalogs, as well as the WVU yearbooks, are all available through the Internet Archive. So if you search archive.org, you can go in and type in Monticola or West Virginia University catalogs and find these. So I included this slide. These were both pieces from while she was, part of the library science faculty. Well, it just does not want to stay on that. To show how engaged she was, I mean, I'm not even trying to give a list of all the things that she did or all the organizations that she was a part of, because she was, just so active and so, involved in so many different things. But I highlighted this bottom part of this caption, and I don't know, or this article, I don't know if you can read it, but it's basically, and this is in 1971, she served as a member of the President's Advisory Committee on Civil Rights for West Virginia, Vice President of the West Virginia Young Republicans, Treasurer of Harrison County Citizens Committee for Better Education, President of the Women's Study Club for 8 years, and is currently serving as the Chairman of the College and University section of WVLA, which continues to be our West Virginia Library Association. And then she has memberships in many other organizations. So, this continues even beyond her retirement. But so the next slide, which is no surprise, is that she retired from WVU in 1978, and there's a folder where people sent her copies of this press release that were from all across the state of West Virginia. We got Wheeling, Martinsburg, Charleston, Clarksburg, and it was announced across the state that she had retired. And I believe that she had many connections in many areas that were mailing those to her. She said in an interview that upon her retirement that she had probably interacted with over 1,000 students, and practically all of the school librarians in West Virginia at that time had been students of hers, and I don't doubt that. In 1981, she married Ernest Monroe, and there's an article, in the Dominion Post, it was written by Norman Julian, where she talks about how she and Ernest got together. They had originally met when she moved here in 5th grade. And then after she retired, and it was nearing her retirement, his, I believe it was his aunt, but would go to visit him, and he would always ask about her. And so they were kind of finding out about how each other were doing. And then once she was retired, you know, they made a connection, and she said they talked on the phone every day for a year. So they married in 1981. I believe this picture is from either a wedding banquet or honeymoon, but it was in the section of the collection with wedding materials. And then, you know, as I mentioned, she continued to have an active civic life after she retired. She joined the West Virginia Library Commission and was on a part of that organization from 1980 to 1992. She also served on the WVU Advisory Board for 8 years in the 1980s. And there's many other organizations, but like I said, I decided just too much to try to document. You know, she passed away in 2006, and that's sort of the end of like my discussion of, you know, overview of her professional life. But I did include this slide just to show that there's other things that show insights into her personal life as well. And these two things are like, it's gossip and recipes, two of my favorite things. But her goddaughter Mercedes wrote her, this is from 1943, saying, you know, she just got a little gossip into call her, and no one's identified in this, but the sermon was directed towards a whole group and one individual in particular. So, but she doesn't say who, and so I suppose they had a really juicy conversation sometime after this letter was received. But I thought that was really cool. And then there's also a cookbook that belonged to her in there, she did write in some recipes. She glued in or taped in some others, and then like me, she just stuck a lot of them in there too. And then for anyone who's from Harrison County, the bottom recipe that she pasted in, it was from Dorothy Davis, who was the preeminent historian of Harrison County too. So, which is not surprising to me that she would be an acquaintance or a friend of Dorothy Davis. So my last slide is just, so when this press release went out last week, the City of Clarksburg shared it from their page, the You Know You're From Clarksburg page shared it, the Kelly Miller Community Center shared it, and there were lots and lots of wonderful comments. I copied probably, I don't know, 20 or so, but I just selected 8 that I wanted to share. I don't know if you all can read them, I don't have to read them all, but my favorite one is this one, because it says, what a great lady. She taught me so much at RW. I loved working in the library with her. She was such a genuine person who enjoyed a good giggle every now and then. So, you know, love to laugh, and I love to hear that she did too. But over and over, folks commented on how she was just a wonderful teacher, a wonderful librarian, how she provided, gave attention that people needed, was really professional, and it was a mentor, and a good neighbor and a friend to many. So I just thought, I have to share some of these. I was so excited to read them online, and so I wanted to share them with everyone here as well. And this is my last slide. It's just a picture of her teaching a group of small children in this photo, and she looks happy to me in that photo. So my contact information is there. We are the stewards of her papers, and we encourage people to come and use them and all the other collections we have at the West Virginia and Regional History Center for Research. Last but not least, I'll say that we do have some old newsletters from 1990 out for people to take if you would like. They have an article, our West Virginia Day program in 1990 was about women in education, and there is a transcript of her remarks in that newsletter, and additionally there's some little promo materials about 2 programs that we have coming up. Thank you so much. Oh, and I forgetting that I need to introduce our artist, Anna Allen. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a portrait artist. I graduated from WVU with a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Painting last spring. My professors at the College of Creative Arts were super instrumental in my development as an artist, and also just very cool people. They introduced me to a lot of new media, including oil paint, and now I work almost exclusively in oil paint because it takes such a long time that I'm allowed to really meditate on the subject matter, which is usually people for me. I paint portraits because I really appreciate individuality, and so before I paint someone, it's really important to me that I get a sense of who they are. So when I was granted the opportunity to paint Victorine Lewis Sell Monroe, I started the process by visiting the West Virginia and Regional History Center here in the downtown library. I learned about Victorine and her achievements, and I also learned about her character. And looking through her records, I found that she wrote poetry. She visited the Caribbean and vacationed in Hawaii and wintered in Florida with her husband Ernest. And she was definitely a warm weather lady. And she worked with children as a teacher and through 4-H and the Young Women's Christian Association. So she was a religious woman, and she clearly felt a duty to help others. She worked with the All Saints Episcopal Mission in Clarksburg, West Virginia, and she was a member of the city's Human Rights Commission as well. It became clear to me through her letters and her guest books that she was loved by a lot of people, and I can see why. On the invitation to the celebration of her 13th wedding anniversary with Ernest Monroe, she wrote, "Please no gifts." And she saved sweet notes from her friends and her relatives. And I also found within her records several photographs given to her by students that were inscribed on the back to my favorite teacher. So it's an understatement to say that Victorine was an outstanding individual. So when I felt like I had an idea of who she was as a person, I was ready to paint her. So I started by selecting an image from the records at the RHC collection. And I chose this image of Victorine because she looks really strong and professional in it. And I edited the photo to reveal more of the details in her jacket, and I put a grid on the image so that I could match it up with a background that I would stage later. I wanted the background to mean something and to provide some insight into Victorine. So for the drapery, I chose light blue because I noticed in a lot of her pictures she really liked light blue, it seemed like. And I rented library science books from this library to represent her work with the university and her interest in the library. And when I had picked all the elements, I wanted to make sure that it would be cohesive with the reference photo of her. So I put the same grid on that image so that I could line it up. And then I overlaid the images digitally to give me an idea of the final product. From there, I was ready to start constructing the canvas. So I used a rubber mallet and a staple gun to assemble the stretcher bars. And I installed screw eyes so that it could be hung from a picture frame wire. And then I measured and cut the canvas and stapled it into place. And then I prepared the surface by applying a coat of gesso, which makes sure that the paint doesn't soak into the canvas and degrade over time. And then I sanded it with a really fine grit sandpaper, which gives me a smooth surface to work on so I can apply details. And I applied a second coat as well, just to make the seal really strong. And then once that was dry, I applied a grid, a very faint one, with the same dimensions as the grid in both of the photographs that I wanted to use. And this makes sure that everything ends up in the same spot on the canvas as it is in the photographs. So with the grid in place, I could draw the contents of each square in the photographs onto the squares on the canvas. And it makes it more digestible and also more accurate. So I drafted Victorine on first so that I would know where to stop when I put the background on. And then I sealed it all with paint thinned with minimal spirits so I could still see through it. And then I applied many layers of transparent raw umber brown oil paint and built it up so that I would get the full range from fully transparent to opaque. And then I used titanium white to highlight certain areas, which just further clarified it. And this is called underpainting, and different artists use it for different purposes. I just use it as a template so that I know where everything goes when I put the paint on top. And then after I had the underpainting where I wanted it, I started with the background. I like to start with the background because it allows me to overlap the foreground of the image and the subject without worrying about covering up any work that I've done. And it also allows me to avoid the halo effect, which is where the paint stops short of the foreground, and then you get just this edge that sort of breaks the realism. And I went with this ultramarine blue and titanium white and lamp black because, again, it was a color that she really liked, from what I can tell. And when it was time to do the foreground, I reestablished her outline and the outline of the books. And then I applied the base hue or the true color to the larger areas of the painting, like her jacket and the books. And since the reference photo was in black and white, I sort of had to just choose the color for her jacket, and I thought that the red contrasted really well with the blue background. And then to create some depth, I darkened and dulled the colors in the areas of shadow, and then I intensified them and lightened the value in the areas where the light touched the most. And then throughout the process of painting the foreground, I was working on her face to give it time to dry in between, and I also applied a base hue to her face, and then I used lighter and darker values to create some dimension and give her some bone structure. And then I added glazes of really vibrant colors like cadmium red and Indian yellow to give her some life. And I made sure to use the full range of values from black all the way to white just to make sure that it was a more intense image. And then lastly, I used a liner brush and thin paint to apply details like her eyelashes and the creases in her lips. And I also used a liner brush and thin paint, thin with a medium called liquid, to paint the more intricate details of the books and like the buttons and her brooch. And when I made a mistake, which I inevitably did, I used a clean brush and dipped it in mineral spirits, and then I could just use it like an eraser, which was really nice. And then finally, I used 2 coats of titanium white to cover any edges that had paint drip over onto them. And then I used a very thin coat of varnish across the entire image to protect it. And it also makes the dry paint, which gets a little dull as it dries, look more like wet, vibrant paint. Painting this portrait of Victorine Louis Stoll Monroe has been a very valuable experience for me. The opportunity to peer into her life because of the existence of the collection, it was essential to me being able to make this painting. And it also reaffirmed to me that I need to feel like I kind of know someone before I'm able to paint them properly. It was a blessing to have been granted the chance to paint her and honor her memory this way, and to have my work and her image especially represented in the downtown library. And this experience allowed me to further develop my professional skills, and it supported my ability to create art. And I want to thank the state of West Virginia and West Virginia University and the faculty, especially in the downtown library, for creating this grant program and the inclusive portrait project, respectively. I'm also extremely grateful that the West Virginia and Regional History Center exists and that they watch over such important documents like these. These need to still be around. I also want to thank Sally Brown for all of her help throughout creating this portrait. And my professors at the university have my deepest gratitude as well for shaping me and a lot of other people into really inspired, creative professionals. And I also want to especially express my gratitude for Victorine Lewis Song Monroe and all that she did for her community and for her students. And lastly, thank you all for your attention.
Well, thanks for coming, everyone. That concludes our program. I just want to break show of hands. How many of you here knew Victorine personally? There are 2 people. So we are going to break. There are some food and goodies over here that I hope you partake in. And if you want to chat with the folks who knew Victorine and maybe get a little other inside knowledge, please feel free to do so. And I think Lori will be available over by the materials too for any questions you might have. Thanks for coming.